folks. Here we are, top of the hour. Let's see who is logging in. Scott is here. Julian, Stephen are also here as me, I see. And we got some folks logging in. So if you would, in the chat box, Eric is here. Chat box. I'm going to type in the word chat box. If you can see that and you can hear me, if you would, type into the chat box, yes, I can hear you, yes, I can see the chat, because that's the very best way for us to make sure that we are communicating today. So Eric, can you hear me okay? I can hear you, awesome. Let's see, so I'm also gonna try something new. I've got a iPad that I'm gonna connect here. I was going to try to connect. We'll see if it works. If it doesn't, then I've got a whiteboard behind me that we can use. I've got a brand new laptop that I just cracked open today. I wasn't intending to buy it, but I got some water spilled on it from a water bottle that my son had. So kind of a bummer there, but that's okay. Because the good news is now I have a brand new laptop. And even though it cost me $2,500, I'm pretty stoked to have it. The problem is with the new laptop, there's different connectors. I usually use an iPad that connects to the laptop, and turns out new models of Macs need different adapters. So nifty way to get them to upsell you. So anyway, why don't we go ahead and get started here. So also, Eric, are you seeing like full screen of me, by the way? Because if I'm going to use the whiteboard here, and anybody else that's joining in, by the way, I want to make sure you guys can all see this whiteboard, because this is what I'm going to be using to explain stuff as I need. I've got lots of questions here, and I want to try to get to as many of them as I can. And so a lot of times as I'm teaching and coaching, I do this with our clients all the time in our coaching program. I'm usually drawing stuff out so that you have some mental models. And so as I'm explaining stuff, I definitely encourage you to sort of take notes. If you got pen and paper, or you got your iPad of your own, write this stuff down. And we'll, obviously answer any questions that you have along the way. But why don't we go ahead and dive right in with today's live Q&A. Okay, so we have lots of questions here. And I divided up the questions into a couple different categories. And so that allowed me to actually kind of group some of the questions together, because some of the questions, even though they're from different people and are slightly different wording, they're actually the same question. So just to kind of give you a preview here of what we've got with the types of questions, we've got some very, very tactical questions about what to do in certain sales situations. And we've got a couple of questions about sales teams and team building. I got a couple questions here on social selling and LinkedIn, using LinkedIn and blogging platforms as a way to do lead generation. And then a couple more questions that are more broad around lead gen in terms of identifying the right contact, getting the right people in place as part of your sales funnel, and what to do in those situations. So what I want to do here is actually I want to start with the sort of the big tactical question, because I think the big tactical question that I've got here is going to lead us to some of the other questions that that people have asked. So I'll just start here. So the tactical question is really, really simple. I think it's pretty simple, but let me read it, and then I'll explain what I think is the right approach to this, or at least how I would approach, or how I would advise our clients on doing this. So the tactical question is this. So we've got a strong 3-star prospect that wants us to present our product at an internal conference, which will take our founder out of the office for a couple days. We could potentially qualify this potential customer to 5 stars without doing this, but attending would obviously speed up qualification and build a new relationship. This is one of our first 10 new customers who we've not got an existing relationship with. And so we expect, and it says, so we expect to go the extra mile. I think it means, so we expect, or maybe you both expect to go the extra mile. Should we even be considering this without further qualification? So a couple of things in this question that is really, really good, by the way. When the person asking the question was talking about having a 3-star prospect versus a 5-star prospect. So sounds like the person that asked this question has been, hey Carl, good to see you here, has been on a previous Q&A webinar, because we've talked about And there's some later on lead qualification questions I'll get to, so it'll be good to cover this topic as a review really quickly. This idea of a 3-star versus 5-star prospect stems back to, adjust this a little bit, this idea of a 5-star prospect. And this is something that I learned from a guy named Dean Jackson. His website is called I Love Marketing. Dude is a super guy and super smart. And his what he calls a 5-star prospect system is what this question is referring to. So the 5 stars in a 5-star prospect system is: 1, is a lead or a prospect willing to engage? Are they friendly and cooperative? I'll explain each of these in detail in just a second. Do they know what they want? So what do they want? They know when they want it. So it's kind of an urgency thing. And then finally, they want your help. So Dean talks about this 5-star prospect system as if in order to get a 5-star prospect, all 5 of these obviously need to be checked. So it sounds like in this case, we've got a lead or a prospect that's a 3-star prospect. And what we want to do whenever we're selling, we want to spend as much time as possible with 5-star prospects. So when we say they're willing to engage, that is somebody who says, for example, they come to your website and they fill out the form, and they're just frankly asking for help. They're coming by your booth. They're reading your white papers if you send them out. They're reading, they're coming to your webinars if you're doing these kinds of things. So they're engaging with you, right? First and foremost, something you need if you have a lead, right? The second thing, are they friendly and cooperative? And really the cooperative piece is so critical here. So as an example, if you have on your website, request a demo, and somebody fills out that form, and so you reply to them, hey, thanks so much for requesting a demo. Before we jump on to a product demo, we have found that it's really, really useful to just spend 10 minutes on the phone so I can learn more about your company and your needs, so that when we do the demo next week, that I can show you all the stuff that's related to your customer, or related to your product or to your company, and the problems and the challenges that you have. So somebody who's friendly and cooperative will go, oh yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Let's hop on the phone for 10 minutes before the demo next Tuesday. That's somebody who's cooperating. They're following your lead. Somebody who's not cooperative would say, no, just show me the demo. Like, okay, well, I can show you the demo, but it's gonna be really hard for me to show you the key pieces of the product that are related to you unless I know. So we're looking for people that are being cooperative. So these are just kind of like, as a human being, are they the kind of people that we want to work with? The next 3 stars are the sort of tactical side of selling. So do they have a need? They know what they want. Do they have urgency? They know when they want to have a solution in place. And most importantly, do they want your help? Meaning that they're coming to you and say, look, we think that you could be the solution to our problems. Now, they may also be evaluating other solutions, but they're actively looking to you as one of those finalists, so to speak. And so that's just to give you some context on the 3-star versus 5-star prospect that was mentioned in this question. And so now to kind of dive into the details of this question about, should we do this travel or not? Because the cost is real, right? You've got not just the plane ticket, but getting the founder out of the office for 2 days. And so we just had a very similar situation with one of our clients who just did their first onboarding on-site kickoff with a new client. So they've been selling one package that is roughly $2,000 a month, $3,000 a month. And now they're upgrading, they're moving up market. They're selling bigger solutions, bigger implementations. And the founder, Eric, was just sharing with me yesterday. He's like, we went on site to do the implementation. We could have done it over the phone and web meetings and all that other stuff. We decided we're going to go on site and do this. And he said, it was awesome. And it was awesome because there's all kinds of questions that came up in the implementation that never would have come up had we were doing even video meetings or phone calls or sending them checklists and asking them how they're doing, because the interaction, the human-human contact, it just breeds much better conversation and uncovers more situations that you just haven't thought about. And so, using that as a model, just because it's recent in my mind, when it comes to selling, especially those first 10 customers, you want to think about like doing things that don't scale, because you need to get that information from people. You need to go and figure out like, what are the questions that they wouldn't necessarily ask you if it was in a web meeting. What are creating some more natural flow, blocking out more time where you know you have their isolated attention because you're in a conference room, as opposed to a web meeting where they could have email open, Slack open, text messages coming in. It's just a better event altogether. So we often did this when I was at Blend. For those of you who don't know, I was head of sales at Blend, which is a lending platform. And we sold to some of the largest banks and mortgage lenders across the United States: Wells Fargo, Chase, Bank of America, NationStar, those kinds of guys. And one of the things we would do as part of our sales process is we would set an on-site meeting up with the key executives on the other side. And it was really it was less of a sales call and more of a work session, meaning it was more of a deep dive discovery session around each of the 3 or 4 or 5 key executives: the CTO, the CIO, the head of lending, the head of security, the head of risk, all of those different people. And it was designed to be a 3-hour time block where we would fly to Chicago or to Des Moines, or that's where Wells Fargo is based, to Dallas, to New York, to Jacksonville, wherever these banks were located, because we wanted to get that information. We wanted to be a free-flowing, open conversation where we know we had their dedicated time and attention for a big block of time, not just some 30-minute slice of meeting. So we found those to be hugely, hugely effective in building relationship and getting information. So the trick here in this kind of situation, and really the crux of this question, which is, look, like we could go there, but if they're not qualified, what happens if we do block out a nice 2-hour block and everybody's ready to go, and we find out 15 minutes in the meeting they're actually not qualified? And maybe they're not qualified because it's not a now thing for them. They might be interested in your technology, they might be interested in your product, but they're not ready to take action in the next 3 months. They might be just using this time of the year as a way to vet, bring in different vendors, do different demos, get ideas about how they might solve the problem they have. They might have a lot of clarity around the problem they have, but they don't have urgency to solve it. So you could get there and you start chatting with them and start talking to them about their timelines. And they're like, well, you know, this is an initiative for this year, but it's probably not going to be anything that we're going to do in Q1 or Q2. We're just collecting information now so that when we're ready to take action in Q3 or Q4, then we'll have all the information we need. Well, now that's somebody where you've flown and you spent 2 days and they're completely unqualified, and you have wasted that time. And that can happen. I've made that mistake myself. And so what I would say in this situation is go through your qualification system, go through these 5-star prospects. And also, prior to the on-site meeting, I would do a round of quick one-on-one calls and conversations with each of the stakeholders that are involved around the sale, people that are either going to be directly providing their opinion or perspective as to whether or not to buy your solution or not, or ancillary people, secondary, tertiary people around the problem that would be affected by its implementation. So for example, you might have an IT person that's managing another internal system that has to hook in to your APIs or your and use your SDKs to exchange data. Well, that person may not necessarily be involved with the purchasing decision, but they're certainly going to be involved and impacted if your solution is implemented. And so you want to map out the entire account and think about who are all the people that are directly influencing the purchasing decision and who are the people that might be impacted. And you can set a date on the calendar 3 weeks from now and say, look, we'll come there and come on site and do the big dog and pony show and do 2 hours of a work session together and really dive in to show you how our solution is going to solve your problem. And in order for us to get the most out of that time in 3 weeks, let's have a quick round of 15-minute, 30-minute discovery conversations, chats, Q&As, whatever, with the 5 or 10 people on the other side that are influencing and will be impacted. And so through that process, it will allow you to increase your level of knowledge about how qualified that lead really is. Is this really a now thing or not? In terms of urgency on the business side. And even technically speaking, let's say you talk to that IT person and you find out that it's like some AS400 mainframe that you can't connect to. It's just like literally impossible for you to connect your system to that system without doing a whole bunch of custom development for them, in which case it's not a now thing, you know, and you wouldn't be able to take action with them in the short run. So you might actually disqualify them before they disqualify themselves. So to answer this question, what I would do is I would say, one, definitely go do the on-site because if it's your first 10 customers that do things that don't scale, Maxim from Paul Graham makes a lot of sense here. There's going to be tons of learning you're going to get from doing those interactions and meeting all those people and learning about the true way that they're thinking about and responding to what you're saying when you're in the same room as them. And in order to make that effective, go through the qualification process, do a bunch of one-on-ones and calls, and really make sure that it is a qualified opportunity first. And then, just know that even after it being qualified, there's obviously some risk involved, that they might change their mind about timing, they might change their mind about budget, or they may just decide that there's another solution that they want to consider. So I would say definitely do it, and to do it, qualify it further, and just explain to them why. Say, look, we just want to make sure if we're going to come there on site in 3 weeks, that you and I are 100% clear about what is the outcome, the desired outcome of this deep dive that we're going to be doing on site. Because if it's just because you want to see a product demo, happy to do that over the web because you're collecting information. But if you're serious about looking through implementation, then it's not just about showing you the product. We want to have a conversation with all the key people about implementation, putting together work plans and scoping out what a project implementation plan might look like. And that's a case where it makes sense for us to come on site and do all that together. So that's how I would handle that situation. Let me just take a quick drink of my Philz coffee in my purple hydro flask. And by the way, if you have any questions or comments, I don't have exactly the person or people who asked these specific questions, so I'm just kind of ripping through these as they were submitted, and I put them into a Google Doc. So if you asked that question and that was useful or not useful, let me know. Or even if you didn't ask that question and that was useful, I'd love to hear a little bit from you here. Carl, Eric, looks like Ilya's here. Got a few other folks. So just, would love to hear from you in the chat box if that was useful, or if you have any follow-up questions to that. So let's talk about, it's like we're talking about leads. So let's go over to lead generation, and a little bit about lead generation and social selling. And then I want to dive into a couple of questions we've got around sales teams. Because I know the sales teams thing, especially this time of year, we have several of our clients that are building up their sales team. They had a big year last year. Now it's time to congratulations, you got a big year last year. You have to have an even bigger year this year. I just got off one of our, twice a month, we do a work sprint. We call it a get shit done work sprint, where we just get on Zoom and clients bring their projects that they're working on and we just jam on them together. And one of our clients, Anne, at a company called 10,000 Feet, they grew 30% in 2018 on top of 20% in 2017. So they're actually growing faster, right? And so now she showed me this big spreadsheet where she has to hire 4 AEs in Q1 and get them up and running and actually performing by April or May in order to hit the 2019 number, which is even bigger. It's a 40% growth. So this is a time of year where a lot of people are thinking about growing out their sales teams, or they need to grow out their sales teams. And I want to make sure we cover those sales questions. Hey, Carl. Hey, man. Good. I'm glad that the answer was useful. Yeah, I mean, the model is the model, right? The model of a pre-demo qualification process scales to on-site. I mean, a lot of whenever I'm teaching sales or we're implementing systems with our clients, it's not about like there's like a million questions you can ask around a million different sales situations. I mean, I've been doing enterprise sales for 25 years, and every day I feel like I'm still learning new stuff about new situations. And so it's impossible to create like a library of a million different answers to a million different questions. What is useful to answering those questions is having a model that works, so you can apply it regardless of whether it's inside sales or outside sales, or in this case, pre-demo or post-demo. So the model is what allows you to really implement systems into your company that allow you to grow and scale. Otherwise, you're just going to be lost in the weeds every day. So, cool. All right. So let's talk about lead gen and broadly, and then we'll talk about social selling on LinkedIn. So, a question here, and we get this question a lot too: an effective way to target the right contact inside a business organization for a B2B solution. And how do you ensure that your engineers do not work on ideas that are already invented? It's like a two-part question. As far as working on ideas that have already been invented, pretty much every idea that you come up with has already been thought of before. All you're doing is adding on top of other people's ideas, whether you're doing it implicitly or explicitly. You might look at somebody's idea and go, oh, that's cool, I'm going to add to it. Or you're going to come up with what you think is a brand new idea, and turns out like 17,000 other people have already thought about some version of this idea. It's just that your 17,000th version of it is slightly different. So, and even so, even if an idea has been invented or thought of, there's plenty of ideas out there. Ideas are easy. It's the implementation that's hard. I mean, we tell people that all the time. It's not about information or invention or ideas. It's about implementation of those ideas. So I would actually, encourage your engineers to go find really good ideas that seem to be working and build on top of those, and not really worry about, whether or not it's already been invented or not, because it probably already has. Very, very few ideas that are completely brand new. But let's talk about the effective way to target the right contact inside of a business organization for a B2B solution. So what we call this, let me just take a quick picture of this. When you're talking about the right contact within a business organization, I think one of the approaches that can be really, really useful, especially as an early stage company, is to get like super, super targeted. Like you should be super, super targeted with who you are selling to. So there's another Paul Graham maxim, which is, focus and narrow your niche so much that it's painful, so much that you're like, I cannot believe that I'm only going to focus on these kinds of customers at this, geography, well, this size, that have this problem. Because you need to get really, really good at nailing one problem with one type of customer. Then you can worry about nailing a lot of problems for a lot of different customers. I mean, even Amazon started with books before they got to where they are today, right? Figured out one product that they could ship really well, do the online marketplace, and then figured out how to grow from there. We have one of our clients called Dossier Solutions. Their approach, what we call this account-based selling. So they're a Norwegian company. And so in Norway, they have a business that's been running for several years, doing multiple millions of dollars in run rate every single year. A couple of years ago, then they moved from just selling in Norway to selling in Norway and Denmark. And now they've got a run rate in Denmark that's growing pretty quickly, a couple $1 million there, approaching a couple $1 million there. And now they're entering, as of January of last year, they wanted to enter the US market with their solution. And their solution is sold to large scale healthcare systems and hospitals. It's a document management compliance enterprise software solution. Super, super boring stuff like snooze, healthcare compliance, huge industry, obviously. Lots of people are excited about it. I look at that and I'm like, wow, that's, not the super sexy kind of thing that's out there, but that's why there's a need, because nobody else has solved this problem. And it is a big problem out there when you start talking about patient data and documents and storage and all those different things. And so one of the things we did with them is we looked at their entry into the US and said, like, holy crap, like this is a multi-billion dollar size opportunity just in the US. Where do you start? And just geographically, because they're based in Norway, that puts some constraints on them, not just because of time zones, but like how do you prospect if you've got one hospital healthcare system in New York, and then you've got another one that's interested in Chicago, and another one that's in Houston, and another one that's in LA, and another one's in San Francisco, and another one's in Seattle. Like you can't just like hop meeting to meeting from New York to San Francisco to Chicago. You're going to spend all your time in airplanes and not really make any progress. So what we did with them is we used California as a beachhead. Because they're a Norwegian company, they have access to a local, based in Palo Alto, it's a local group, it's an incubator group for Nordic startups. So they joined this membership group, and that kind of gave them a home office of sorts and some local resources. And we said, basically, look, based on your market strategy and the kinds of problems that you solve best, let's make a list of the top hospital healthcare systems. So we actually came up with 30 hospitals and healthcare systems just in Northern California. And the reason we did that is just so that if and when they start making progress on the sales side of things, they could fly from Norway to San Francisco and then have a week of meetings just in the San Francisco Bay Area or just in Northern California, right? And so when you start thinking about this from a lead gen standpoint, it's really, really narrow, right? It's only 30 systems. So whether it's 30 or 100, when we were at Blend, we focused on the top 100 lenders in the US first in terms of volume. So Wells Fargo is number one. I think Quicken is number 4. Prime Lending is number 5. So we just made that list. We said, if it's not on that list, we're not going to go after it right away. Like later on, as we go down market and we start hitting the rest of the industry, yeah, we'll hit the other 7,900 mortgage lenders that are out there. But for now, we're starting with the first 100. That's our account-based selling strategies. That's what we did at Blend. That's what we implemented with Dossier. And so when you're doing your lead generation and you're doing your outreach for these people, when you're selling an enterprise solution within each business, so here's our business, we know that there are multiple buyers, multiple people involved in the sale. We talked about this in the previous question. So you have kind of your small circle. These are the actual buyers, people that are involved with the purchasing decision. And then you have people that are influencers on the decision. And you might even have a third circle. We talked about people that are impacted. So within any organization, you've got your core set of buyers, you've got other people in the organization that are going to influence those buyers, even if they don't have a direct say into whether or not to make a purchase or not. And then you have all the people that once the purchase is made and implemented, they're going to be impacted organizationally. And so you get these concentric circles out. And so if you think about just the core buyers in any enterprise sale, there's actually 4 core buyers. There's the economic buyer, person who's writing the check. You have the tech buyer, or buyers in most cases. This is like your CIO, your CTO, your chief risk officer, your chief data officer, your chief security officer, all the people that are responsible for really, really technical topics. You have your users, people actually using the product, and then you have your product champion. So you could have anywhere from 5 to 10 people on this core buying team. I think there's the most recent CB Insights, CEB Insights did a study, and I think the average number of buyers directly involved with an enterprise sale is now crept to like 7.2, 6.8, 7.2, something like that. That number sticks in my mind. Those are just the people directly making the purchasing decision. So it's purchased by committee, and there's a lot of them. And then you have the influencers around it, which could be, if you've got 5 core buyers, it could be 20 people influencing those 5 core. And you get hundreds of people, even thousands of people that could be impacted, right? So when you think about lead gen, what you want to do is get super, super clear about who are these people at your target customers. Who is the person ultimately? If I'm selling to this hospital chain or I'm selling to this healthcare network, who is the person who ultimately will write the check? Whose budget is this coming from? Is it a CTO? Is it a chief data officer? Is it a chief compliance officer? Is it a CEO maybe who has the final say and is going to pay for that? So you need to know who that person is. Same on the technical buyer. Who are all the people that are going to be looking at your solution and the implementation of your solution to make sure that you're within guidance and compliance and technical specs of that problem that needs to get solved. And so what ends up happening if you do this for all of the different buyers, and you start getting almost like a list of people on each account. So we'll just say there's 8 people. And so now even if you only have 30 people on your list, or let's bump this up and make it 100, like we had at Blend, but there's 8 different people that are part of this core buying group. Well, now you actually have 8 times 100. That's 800 person hit list, so to speak. And so as you're going out and doing your prospecting, you want to identify all 800 of those people, find them on LinkedIn or find them at conferences, because the compliance officer is going to go to one kind of conference, the VP of marketing is going to go to a different kind of conference in that industry. So you need to map that entire structure out. First find them, know who they are, figure out their titles within your target market, your account-based selling approach. Then start just building up that list, figuring out where you can find those kinds of people, whether it's digitally on LinkedIn, virtually in different groups meetup, whether it's professional groups, meetup groups, groups on LinkedIn, for example, where people hang out. Another one of our clients called Disco, they sell an HR platform solution, and they discovered there's actually a Slack channel of HR people that are focused on culture within their companies. It's like 5,000 people that all care. They're HR people that care about culture. It's like this culture channel that's hosted on Slack, and that's who they sell to. They solve they solve a problem for companies that care about and want to reward their employees for following mission, visions, and values of the company. And so they found those people. That's where the people they need to sell to hang out. And so we put together a partnership strategy where they proposed to the person running that Slack channel, like, hey, we'd love to run an educational webinar to teach that population, those 5,000 HR people that care about culture. We want to teach them what we've learned with other clients as we've implemented our solution, because this is all we do is think about culture each and every day. And they're like, oh, that's awesome. So once they offered that webinar, they had 150 people attend the first webinar. They showed up, and then now all of a sudden they basically pulled those 5,000. They've got 150 in a webinar, and from those 150, then you can pull some of those people out of the marketing webinar into a sales conversation. So it's just knowing where those people are hanging out, whether it's digitally, virtually kind of places, or like I said, conferences and other types of meetings. And so in terms of an effective way to target the right contact inside each of this business organization, that's where, again, it's incumbent on you to do things sometimes that may not feel like they're going to scale very well, because it's not about putting all 8 of those people into some email list and then just blasting out the same email to all 8 different buyers, because the technical person in that purchasing situation, they actually have a different perspective, and they care about different things related to your product and that problem that they have relative to the economic buyer, relative to the user buyer, relative to the product champions. And so you're actually going to have different messages for each of those 8 people. So whether you're connecting with them on LinkedIn or sending them emails or proposing a time to get together at the next industry conference, it's not about one message to 800 people. It's about potentially 800 messages to 800 people. And that's hard and it's painful, but that's the only way you're going to know what message works and what doesn't. It's the only way you're going to know which of these 100 are willing to engage with you. Star number 1 on the 5-step prospect system, which ones are willing to engage with you and have that meeting or have a conversation or come to the webinar or download the white paper. The only way you're going to know is not sending one blast email to 800 people with the same message. It's potentially 800 different emails that you send out. And so through that testing, you're going to see quickly who's responding to you, who's not responding to you. Because you might find, and we found this with Dossier as they were going through their healthcare systems, a lot of the technical buyers really gravitated to the message. They really like, okay, yes, technically this is a hard problem for us to solve. This patient data thing is a big deal. And there's all kinds of compliance rules and regulations. Like, if our company doesn't fix this problem, we are completely screwed. Like, could potentially have lawsuits. And so for them, of the different buyers that were involved with the purchase, they found out this ended up being their best entry point into the organization. And once they had the preliminary first couple of conversations with the technical kind of people, the compliance people or the data people, then those data people or compliance people will say, okay, look, what we need to do next is get you in front of our chief operating officer, because this is going to come from his budget or her budget. And then they start branching into the other people in the organization. Or, hey, now we need to get you in front of our director of document services or document manager or IT people who manage all these documents now. That would be the user buyers. And so only through experimentation and knowing, first mapping your accounts, which industry vertical niche you're going to target. Secondly, who are the buyers within that? And then messaging them to see who replies back. That will reveal for you exactly how to go about it. So that's the approach that I would take. That's the approach, frankly, you're going to need to take early on, because that will reveal for you exactly how you need to approach sales going forward. So I'm going to take a breath and another sip of coffee. I'll take a picture and we'll get to the next question. Again, if you have any questions, comments, suggestions, required clarifications, pop that into the chat box. Oh, by the way, I should have mentioned that you might see two of me logged in here. There's me talking to you, and then there's a picture of me somewhere, or another panelist that's also me. The other me is actually Stephen and Julian, who work with me on the team here at Sales Qualia. They help with building and implementing strategies and solutions for all of our coaching clients. And so I failed to recognize them for helping me set this up. But also it reminded me that there's a lot of you out there, whether you're here today or you're just watching the recording of this, that you're getting all this information, but the implementation is actually really hard. And so one of the things that we like to do is help, if we can, with implementing on these ideas. And so one of the best ways to do that is to book in what we call a strategy session, a scale session. And so that scale session is just designed for us to do some Q&A with you individually around your current sales process. How are you prospecting? How are you managing your deals in your pipeline? How are you pricing and converting your paying customers? How are you upselling them? What is your product approach? All those sort of, think of it as an interrogation around your sales process. And that will help us help you identify some gaps and opportunities in your sales process. So that's something we like to do with folks as a reward for spending some time with us here. And so Stephen or Julian, if you would, I know we have a calendar set up that you guys manage for us. If you guys could pop that into the chat box. Thank you. So if you're on the call and you just, as we're going through some of this stuff, you're like, okay, that looks really good. I think I'd want to implement that with my sales process, but you want a little bit of help, just go ahead and book in a scale session. And if we can help you out, we will. Okay. Okay, so let's go back to, I'm going to answer one or two more sort of lead gen questions, and then we'll get into the sales team's questions. So had several questions around LinkedIn. So when it comes to social selling, for example, LinkedIn, should I go straight for the jugular with my strongest pitch, or do you recommend the jab, jab, jab strategy from Gary Vee? If it's the latter, could you give some examples? And then I had some other questions about effective manner for utilizing LinkedIn to generate B2B sales. And also a related question is like, hey, I want to start blogging about sales. Do I start my own blog or post at Sales Hacker, Medium, HubSpot, et cetera? So, so I think I can sort of group all of these questions into one answer. And the way the jab, 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 right hook with Gary Vee, I think, is absolutely the way to go in any kind of social environment. And the way we just had this in a coaching call yesterday with a client that is implementing a LinkedIn lead gen strategy with us. And the way I always think about this is that whether I'm engaging with somebody on LinkedIn in a digital environment or in a physical environment, it should feel the same. And what I mean by that is if I was at a conference and I was in line for coffee and I saw somebody's name tag that said they're, director of marketing at IBM, it's probably unlikely let's say I sold a solution that was designed for directors of marketing at Fortune 500 companies. It's probably unlikely that the first thing I would say is, hey, Bob, I saw you the director of marketing at IBM. Let me tell you all about our product. Vomit, 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 vomit. Oh, by the way, I've got my iPad right here. Can I show you a demo? Oh, can I send you a link and fill out a sample login? And then you can check it out and let me know if it's good for you. Like if you did that at a conference, in a coffee line, security would come and escort you out. They'd be like, who is this crazy lunatic that's just accosting people in the coffee line, blathering on about their product? Like, you would not do that. It doesn't make logical sense to do it. If you did, you'd be violating pretty much every law of public etiquette and how you'd want to approach somebody. And so if it seems absurd to do it in person, then it should feel absurd to do it online. The problem is we're not there online. We have this invisible wall that we can just like send out blasts of email. We can send out a bunch of LinkedIn messages. We can just, go for the jugular and it's like, oh, here's our best pitch. Let me know if it's for you. Like, frankly, it's just lazy. That's lazy selling for us to say, here's everything about our product. Let me tell you why it's so great. I want you to accept this information that you didn't ask for, that's voluminous, requires you to do a lot of work, a lot of interpretation, and then think about, okay, based on all this information I didn't ask about, that's voluminous, and I've got to like synthesize all this information, and then I got to tell this person whether or not I think we could use it. That's just downright lazy. We're asking our buyers to do all of the work for us. So not only is it breaches of etiquette, but it's just lazy. So let's not do that, right? Let's just not do it. So the way you do want to do it, whether you're on LinkedIn or any other sort of social network, or even on a conference, right? We always teach this three-part model. So the three-part model is connection, conversation, and then conversion. So connection is exactly that. Like you're making a connection with somebody. So if it's physical, you're in a line in a coffee shop. Oh, hey, John, I saw you're the director of marketing at IBM. What brings you to the conference? That's a way of making a personal connection with somebody. You're seeing if they want to engage with you. The same online. The connection is just sending a LinkedIn, a personalized LinkedIn request, and just connecting with them, right? And then once they've connected, there's no pitch in this. It's just, oh, hey, John, saw you're the director of marketing at IBM. Looks like we have about 25 of the same contacts. I've been in the same industry as you for a long time. We haven't met, but I thought, if you're up for it, maybe we could connect here on LinkedIn, right? Some of you might have on this call. I think Carl, for example, got a message like that from me. Dave's on this call. How are you doing, Dave, by the way? I think you guys are connected to me on LinkedIn because that's the way you connect with people, right? It's not asking for anything. You're not selling anything. You're not trying to pitch anything. It's just like, hey, we have a lot of stuff in common. We're in the same industry, solving a lot of the same problems, and I work with people just like you. So look, man, if you're up for it, let's connect, right? So that's step one. Step two is conversation, meaning we need to find out, going back to that 5-star prospect system, are they willing to engage with us? So this overlap that you see between connection and conversation is about assessing engagement. So after somebody connects with you, creating conversation with them. And so one way to do it, after somebody accepts your connection request, hey, John, thanks so much for accepting my connection request. Oh, by the way, I was wondering, I had a quick question about blah, blah topic. And then ask the question and see, just like, again, if you're physically in proximity to somebody, you would just engage in a conversation. You ask them a question and you're looking for engagement. Are they willing to answer your question? Are they interested in having a conversation? Or maybe it doesn't have to be a conversation around like Q&A back and forth. It could be like, oh, hey, John, really good to connect with you here on LinkedIn. Oh, by the way, we just recently published a white paper that where we explain for directors of marketing at Fortune 500 companies, the 3 top challenges that directors of marketing are facing in 2019. I'm just making this stuff up. Should I send you a copy? Would you like to see it? Yes, I would. Cool. Let me send it to you. Would love to get your thoughts. Are you up for a chat next week? Conversation, right? Totally natural. So you're just looking for engagement. Now, a lot of people, they may not engage with you. They might accept your connection request, but maybe they're just going through and accepting requests. They don't really check their messages, or maybe they're not interested because they're really busy, right? Or maybe they don't want to have a direct message conversation with you. But now that they are part of your network on LinkedIn, as you're posting information on LinkedIn, then they might engage with that, right? You post an article and they go, oh, I like that, or comment on that, or they share it, right? And that's part of this conversation that you're having with somebody. The conversation could be, back and forth in a direct message, or the conversation could be more broad. You're posting stuff in a public conversation, they're responding back to that public conversation. And then after you see that engagement, then that will reveal for you this next overlap, which is about what we're looking for here is engagement. The second thing we're looking for here to go from conversation to conversion is need. So they might engage with your content, but if there's never urgency or there's never a need for what you do, then there's no sale. There's no reason to go for the juggle. There's no reason to go with your best pitch. But at some point, if they've been engaging with your content enough on LinkedIn, or they've been back and forth with you on direct message, and you simply ask them like, hey, would you like some help with that? Would you like some help with that problem? We solve that problem every day. Could I show you a couple of case studies on how we solve this for directors of marketing and other Fortune 500 companies? Would you like to have a quick chat and I can show it to you? And they go, yeah, that sounds cool. I'd love to take it out. Check it out. Now you've got your conversion, right? So there's a guy named Jocko Willink who I listen to and follow. He's a retired Navy SEAL, and he has this saying, "Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast." And I think it's particularly relevant in the social world because you want to take it slow. The more you rush, as soon as you rush, somebody's going to cut you off. I get emails every day. I get connection requests that inside the connection request, it has links to demos or links to the people's calendars or links to presentations. Like, people are selling to me before they even connect with me. And you're probably getting this too. If you're the CEO of a company, people are finding you. They're searching for you. They're looking for CEOs. They're looking for people in your industry. And they're doing a lot of the same thing you're doing. But the problem is they're doing it wrong. They're going for the conversion before they even make a connection. So let's take it slow. Let's make it easy. Let's just open doors for people, let them walk through the process. And when they're ready, it's going to be clear to you to offer help. And when they're ready, it's going to be clear to them to ask for help. So when you're thinking about LinkedIn and social strategy, that's the way to think about it. The connection, conversation, conversion. So again, as a model, this is something you want to follow, regardless of where you are, whether it's digitally or in person. And this also appends to, I mentioned content and posting on LinkedIn, because there's another question in this world or in this pile about wanting to start blogging about sales. What I would do, getting website visitors is really, really hard, obviously, especially a topic like sales. So I would go to other platforms first and just start creating there. So it could be like in LinkedIn, you could write a post that has, there's character limits to an actual LinkedIn post. I don't remember what the exact character limits are, but it's a pretty short post. It's like a couple hundred words. You could do a LinkedIn, not just a LinkedIn, or I think there's updates and posts. I forget how they describe it. So, or an article. I think there's posts and articles. So posts are shorter. They limit your word count there. LinkedIn articles, you can just kind of post it like a blog post on LinkedIn. So you're in that platform, and the people that you've connected with are either going to see it in their feed, or you could proactively share it with people that match up with your ideal customer profile. Hey, John, we connected a couple of weeks ago. Just wanted to let you know, I just published this post about marketing challenges for Fortune 500 companies. I thought you'd like to take a look at it. Another place you can go is a place like Quora. I spent a lot of time on Quora a couple of years ago, just answering sales questions, and got lots of followers there and lots of people that eventually I've actually had a couple of people become clients on Quora. Medium is another place that you can go, because then people are searching for certain hashtags and keywords and those kinds of things. I would just sort of focus there first, just to get some traction and some following. And one thing you could do is always link back to your own website. So produce the same content in both places. And in a LinkedIn post, for example, we do this all the time, where we will have like a LinkedIn post that's restricted, like to say 200 words, and we'll have a link that says, to read the rest of the post, click here, and it'll take them back to our website. Or, hey, to listen to this podcast, click here, go to iTunes. Or to download a copy of this white paper, click here and take them to a landing page. And so you could take that approach as well. But if, wherever your target market is hanging out, it's much easier to go where people are already hanging out. Like if there's a big party going on and you walk into a room of like 2,000 people having a really great party, and you walk in there and you're like, hey, everyone, guess what? I got another party. It's over here. Who wants to come join me? Meaning your website. Like, it's hard to get them to leave that party and go to your website. So if they're there, and just go hang out with them there. The party's already there, so that's where you should hang out and post your stuff, whether it's on LinkedIn or in groups or Slack channels that are out there, or there's a really great Google group I belong to called Modern Sales Pro. Lots of great content gets exchanged there, so you can just post inside of those listservs. I mean, those are just another place where people are hanging out. So that's how I would approach it, and just always approach it in terms of add value, add value, add value. Don't be salesy, don't be pitchy. Add value to people, and the people that are ready to take action with you, they'll make themselves known. Just open doors and let people walk through. So, we got about 10 or 15 minutes left. So let me just take one more drink of my Jacob's Dark Roast from Phil's across the street. I'm a huge Phil's fan, by the way. Mostly drink the tantalizing Turkish in the morning. It's like jet fuel, highly caffeinated, and gets me going in the morning. But today I went with Jacob's. So how are we doing, by the way? I haven't seen too much in the chat box. Carl followed up with some comments here. Experimented. Let me look at your comment, and then we'll go over to the sales team questions. I experimented with stopping writing personalized connection requests and embedded my value proposition in my personal profile. Do not see any decrease in connection acceptance, and people are just happy to engage once they're connected. Save me a ton of time wrangling over personal messages. Yeah, so there are ways to automate this. So whether your automation is like copy paste the same message, or one of the two software tools that work really well in tandem is Sales Navigator, which sits inside of LinkedIn. It's extra service on top of a LinkedIn subscription or free profile, whatever you have. That's something like $99 a month. I don't know exactly what the pricing is. Maybe it's more. And then using that along with what's another tool called Linked Helper. So Linked Helper is a non-LinkedIn product, but it connects with your Sales Navigator. And so you can have a saved search. So going back to your ideal customer, like take that account-based approach. Like you can create a list. You say, okay, I'm looking for hospital healthcare executives with C-level executives in Northern California at companies with employees greater than 10,000. And it creates a list for you. And like any search, the more specific you get, the smaller the list and more targeted. What you can do is feed that list into Linked Helper. And Linked Helper, you can put a template in there, and Linked Helper will shoot out messages, connection request messages that look personalized, because there's a couple fields inside the messages like, hey, first name, was reading about your business, your insert company. And so when somebody receives that message, it does look semi-personalized, much more so than I would like to connect with you, or I would like to add you to my network, that you get from just hitting the connect button. And just, I think it's almost binary, as Carl's indicating here. Like if you get like the random, I would like to add you to my network, that's, people are like, okay, that's just like totally just somebody hitting connect. But as long as it looks somewhat like you put some effort in, the likelihood of hitting connect on the other side is much, much higher. People accepting connection requests goes up. So I think it's just a marginal gain to make it like exactly personal for each person. So if you're just looking for getting some connection level numbers up in your network and hitting your target market, I think you go, as long as you're not using the standard one and some level of personalization, and Linked Helper on top of Sales Navigator helps you do that. And credit to Julian, who's on the line here, for figuring that out here. And he's implemented that with us, and we have a whole training sequence that we run our clients through on LinkedIn. It's like a 6-part video training, everything from the tech tools that you need that we just talked about, all the way through to this connection, conversation, conversion, all the way through to like how do you manage your direct messages that are coming through LinkedIn. So huge credit to him for setting that up and figuring that out, and we've been able to roll that out to all of our clients as part of our startup selling coaching program. So, is that Ilya? Am I saying that right, Ilya, by the way? I'm pretty sure I am. I really like the analogy about connecting at the conference and going to the party. I appreciate the response. Yeah, man, no worries. Absolutely. And, you know, I've heard this, I don't remember where I heard it first, but I've heard it from several people. We always talk about business to business selling, B2B. It's not B2B, it's H to H, it's human to human. Like it's a person on the other side that's getting that message. That person is in line at Phil's. That person is reading your message and has a screaming baby because they're a stay-at-home mom and dad and they're trying to get their work done and their kid is sick. Is somebody who's stressing out because they're not going to hit their quarterly number and the earnings statement's coming out. It's about to be announced at MSNBC. Like these are like people that have crap going on every single day, good and bad stuff. And I think the more we remember on the other side of that message, like how would you feel if you got the message that you're sending? If I got that message, how would I respond to it? Would I at least read it? Would I consider it, even if I don't respond? And I think if we just take that approach and just know that there's a human on the other side, I think that will drastically improve the messaging that we do. So, okay, so let's tackle the sales teams question. So 2 questions I think are they're submitted by the same team here. When I need to create, when do I need to create a different squad for sales, like a different sales team, depending on the type of prospects or depending on the product that we sell? And then there was a follow-up question that says, what about inbound versus outbound relation? We need to, do we need to differentiate, or should we differentiate SDRs to qualify prospects from each source? So this is really about team management, team scaling, team management question. So, there's a lot of different ways to grow your sales team. So let me just go through a couple. Again, I'll just use some basic models and then we can get more specific if we need to. Let me snap a picture of this. We'll make this our last question for the day. So the place I always start when you're thinking about your sales team is starting with your sale and your sales process. So just to draw like a super easy sketch, at time 0, which is like lead, through to referenceable, happy client, time, let's just call it 12 months, right? We know that there's this process we have to bring everybody through, right? There's all of the prospecting that happens. There's your lead qualification that happens. There's product demos, right? There's doing on-site meetings. There's like technical demos. So a lot of times after we do the business team demo, the business team is excited, they want to buy the product, and they go, okay, but now you have to show it to IT to make sure they're okay with it, because they want to ask questions about integrations and SDKs and APIs and all that other stuff. So you have tech demos, and then you have like building out implementation plans. Then you have like pricing conversations. Then you have like contract and legal, and then you finally have onboarding. So, you've got lots and lots of steps, no surprise to anybody here that's been selling, like lots of steps in the sales process, right? So when you start to think about where to build out the team, frequently, if we think about places where we can start to add some scale or repeatability to our sales process, I kind of think about this as kind of the specialization required for each step. Make this a little closer. Got a better marker here. That one's completely dry. Specialization. So once we sort of if we're really good, if we know what our target customer is, and we know what the messages are that they're responding to, what is the need, what is the problem, how do we talk to the problem when we're sending out an email or talking to people on LinkedIn or meeting them at conferences or getting them on our email list, whatever that is, it should be pretty repeatable. So over time, the specialization for these parts of the sales process is actually pretty low, right? But as we go deeper into the sales process in that direction, right, specialization, like doing even some product demos, you want to think about, we want to tailor every demo to the customer. We don't want to just have some 17-step demo we do for every single person just because they requested a demo. Every demo should be personalized, right? On-sites, we talked about this at the top of the live Q&A. It's a deep dive, specialized conversation. They're expecting, insights and perspectives and knowledge from the people in that room, not just, hey, we are here to demo this product. Here is our slide deck, slide 1, slide 2, slide 3. Do you want to buy it? Like, that doesn't work, right? High level specialized knowledge. The technical demos, you've probably got people on your team, whether it's you as a CEO or your co-founders, your CTOs, your product managers, right? Lots of questions are going to come up in this technical demo. And those questions are going to be different as you're thinking about implementations. I remember at Blend having conversations on, like, I wasn't having the conversations, I was there listening to the conversations on the technical side. And our VP of engineering, Justin, like, every question, like, it was like different for every client, because every client that we were going to implement with had different internal systems that we had to hook up with. So like, one client would like, okay, well, here at our company, we're using one loan origination platform. Over here, we're using a different database system. Over here, we've got this system for application intake. And so it's just different for every single client. So these technical conversations became very, very specialized. And then you get into implementation, same thing, because now you're taking all of that technical knowledge and deciding how do we implement that as a work plan. And then, especially the early customers, you're still trying to figure out pricing. It's not a one size fits all, at least in large enterprise stuff. If you have sort of like a $99 a month subscription package, or $99, $249, $999, it's probably pretty standard. But as you get into much bigger implementations, the pricing could really change based on the amount of custom, but configurations you might have to do, timelines, trainings, implementations, all that other stuff. And then contract stuff also can get pretty specialized as well. But then eventually you get to your onboarding process and the specialization levels actually go down, right? Because now we got the 100 users, we're getting their logins, we're going to do training, we're going to do our weekly reports to see who's using it and who's not, go back and do retraining. That should all be pretty lockstep over time. So you end up with this arc, right? And so if you look at your sales team and your sales process, the first places that you want to start hiring, I always tell people, start on the edges and work your way in. And so that means, like, here on prospecting and lead development, these are your SDR roles. And over here on the back end, these are your CS roles. Now, if you're really early and you're just like really stuck for cash, this can be the same person. It's what's often called a utility person. So the same person that's doing some SDR work will then also do some customer support for you. I did this at Altos Research. I actually did all of this because I was the first non-founder that came into the company. So I was doing the sales, managing the leads, creating the leads, managing the leads, doing the demos, onboarding people, and then any tickets that came in, I would do those at night until we got to a point where we need a customer success person. We hired Kristen to be our customer success person. And then we got to the point where we need 2 more salespeople. And we hired 2 salespeople on the front end. And we just kind of kept growing from there. So I would look to the edges, because that way for you're still involved with the sales process. And the person eventually that can take over the middle with a high level of specialization is kind of your account executive kind of person, the person that's been in your industry for some time, that understands how to talk to the executives on the other side of the table, the kinds of people that you can be comfortable if you're not in the room with them, but the CTO of the other company is there, or the chief product officer in the other company, the prospect is there. You don't feel like, oh, I got to be there. You can say, hey, Sarah is our kick-ass account executive. She's been in the industry for 10 years. She can go toe-to-toe with these people. Eventually, that's the place where you can hire. And that only happens after the specialized knowledge becomes more repeatable as well. And then you can transfer that to an AE kind of person. Eric says that person was me until 6 months ago. Yeah, CEOs were everything, right? When you first get started. So when you're thinking about, just to go back to the original question, creating your sales team, or your squads is the word, depending on different prospects. So getting even further specialized. So let's get down into the prospecting side of things. And so one of the things that we work on with our clients is what we call a prospecting plan of action, right? And we think about that as, here's our, go down. here's kind of our, think of it as like this circle is time and effort. Like what are, if we're going to divide that up kind of like a pie chart, we've got some inbound, maybe that comes in from LinkedIn or conferences, or not LinkedIn, inbound. So maybe inbound comes from conferences, comes from request a demo on the website, SEO, referral partners, that kind of stuff. So you have your inbound part of your prospecting plan of action. You have your outbound, right? Which is, could be LinkedIn, email, those sorts of things. And then you have maybe a third part, which is, call it referrals or partners, right? And so when you're thinking about your sales teams, the first thing you want to do is, and the question here I think is positioned correctly, knowing that, hey, the way we manage outbound and inbound is actually a lot different, right? Because if we're in a situation where we have authority voice in our market and we're going to conferences and I'm up on stage and I'm speaking every couple months at a conference and we have a booth and we've dialed in our conference selling strategy, then we know, okay, every time we run a conference, I'm going to be up on stage. I'm going to tell people about what we do. I'm going to share all my insights and perspectives and expertise in the market. And then in the booth, I've got my team that's going to be handling those effectively inbound leads. And then we've got our system to book meetings and demos and all the other stuff after. And the same thing with like, okay, we have inbound website stuff, people that request a demo. Here's how we handle that process. Just because they requested a demo doesn't mean they get a demo. You still got to qualify them. But regardless, you're going to have a much higher success rate here because people are opting in right now. Again, just because they opt in doesn't mean they're qualified, doesn't mean they get to buy, doesn't mean they get to even see a demo. They might request a demo and they're just not your customer, your target customer, in which case you qualify them out. But in general, obviously your conversion rates should be much higher with inbound versus outbound. Because outbound, it's just going to be lower because you're doing a lot more persistent outbound, a lot more communication. So here your percentage is going to be lower. But ultimately, when you think about when you go to your lead qualification, I mean, these are still going to filter to the same lead qualification process. You're still going to ask the same questions to make sure that there's a need, to make sure that the right people, to make sure that there's timing on this and all of those things. But whether I think you can, if you have the luxury of hiring multiple SDRs at the same time, then I would definitely divide out. I have like one SDR that's all based on handling inbound leads and another one that's handling outbound, because you could have very different types of people necessary for those roles. Like an outbound SDR is going to be a more traditional sales minded kind of person. We talk about hunters and farmers and somebody who's aggressive and, doesn't mind taking no, doesn't mind doing 50 dials before lunch, all that kind of stuff. That kind of person is different than a person who, maybe is a little bit more, is less aggressive. They're just good at communicating with people. They're good at managing a lot of leads and trying to figure out how to prioritize those kinds of things. So you get a different behavioral profiles of an inbound person handling inbound leads versus a person handling outbound leads. We actually have a client we just got off the phone with, is the same one that's hiring the four AEs in Q1, and she actually has a person on her team who she's moving from account executive into sales enablement. And it's simply because when they hired this person to do sales, as he started getting into sales, he was like, I just don't feel like I really love doing sales. Like, he was good at it. He did his job, and some months he had quota and all that other stuff, but it just wasn't a good fit. And so she's moved him into a sales enablement role so he can still contribute and take advantage of his knowledge and his dedication and desire to contribute to the company. But it's just a different personality that's necessary for sales and non-sales. And it's a different personality and a different behavior that's necessary for somebody who's doing outbound or inbound. So if you're going to hire SDRs, and as long as you have enough flow on both, so meaning that if you hire somebody to manage inbound leads, you better damn well have enough inbound leads to keep that person busy. Like they should be coming in regularly so that person can book meetings, do qualification, go to conferences, do all those kinds of things. So they're not just sitting around like, okay, I hired an inbound SDR, but there's just not enough inbound leads. So guess what, inbound SDR, we need you to go do outbound because we got to fill the funnel. We're like, oh crap, that's not what you hired me to do, and that's not what I want to do. So if you're going to hire somebody to manage inbound versus outbound, make sure you have enough of both. So either enough inbound leads coming in, and on the outbound side, make sure that you've got enough people targeted that that outbound person can stay busy for a while, right? Because if you're doing, whether it's like an account-based selling approach, saying we want you to hit these 800 people consistently for a couple months and see what's there, and then move them to another list, or you're a little bit further along in your payment sales, where it's just like, okay, now we've proven product market fit, and it's time for us to just get a lot more leads into the system. We know exactly who we're going after. We know exactly what the message is. So now it's just time to scale the sucker. Well, if you have that much proof and that much data that it's going to be successful, then you probably want to hire like 2 or 3 or 4 of these people, because then it's just about scale. It's already working. So if it's working once and you're getting ROI, just do it as many times as you can. So this is also something we have one of our groups that we manage is called Elevate. It's a mastermind group for CEOs. And we get together monthly, virtually, and then we get together 3 times a year in person for a full day and just work on sales management, company management challenges and opportunities. So sales hiring is a big one. Sales management is a big one that we talk about. And back in September, we had Aaron Ross come and spend a couple hours with us. So a lot of you might know who Aaron Ross is. He wrote a book called Predictable Revenue. And then he also wrote a book called From Impossible to Inevitable. He co-authored with Jason Lumpkin. So he's been in the startup world for many, many years. And so he came and talked to us about this exact topic. And he talked about the importance of bifurcating the roles and making sure you have enough volume to support both. And then also making sure that you're hiring in groups, not just one person, because you want to know, like, is that person successful because of the systems and the message that we've built, or are they just like gritting and grinding it out and they're going to be successful no matter what? You want to be able to A/B test or ABC test your system across multiple people. Another person that we've had come talk to the group, her name is Trish Bertuzzi. She's the CEO of a company called the Bridge Group, who does a lot of sales development work with larger scale companies, mid-market companies and larger. And all of her data shows 50% fail rate of SDRs. So if you only hire one, if the person is successful or not successful, we don't always know, are they successful or not because of them, or because of our system, or because of our product. Whereas if you have 2 or 3 or 4 SDRs, and maybe 2 are successful and one's not, or one's successful and 2 are not, or 2 are and 2 aren't, that'll help you identify and really start narrowing down what are the kinds of people that are going to be successful in this role. Like, the system seems to work because we've had 2 successful SDRs. These 2 were not successful. What about those 2 that weren't successful? Can we learn so that we don't hire, maybe it's you hired the wrong people, or you gave them territories or accounts that just weren't the same quality and the same target as these over here. So by doing the ABC, ABCD testing across the hiring, that informs you about how to grow and scale the company on the sales side more accurately. So the other related question to this, and then I'll wrap up here on the sales teams, was, do we need to create different teams based on type of product and the type of prospects? So this is actually a topic that just came up in the Modern Sales Pro listserv that I was mentioning a little bit earlier, which is, a lot of times companies be really successful in the small, medium-sized business, the SMB segment, and the reps are kind of like really knocking it out, selling $500 a month subscriptions or $1,000 a month products, $15,000 a year types of solutions. And now all of a sudden you want to jump up and start selling to larger enterprise, Fortune 500s, or companies over 100 million in revenue. And now your price point jumps because maybe the product is a little bit different, or maybe the product's not. You just charge more because they're a bigger company, which I've done. And it's totally legitimate to do that. But you're jumping from like a $15,000 sale or a $500 a month sale to a 50 or 100 or $200,000 sale, right? The skill set of the person that's knocking down $500 a month subscriptions, that could be a really short sales cycle, right? It's like inbound lead, qualify them, demo, conversion, credit card, done. Like 4 steps over 2 calls, you're done. Easy. And you got inbound leads, right? But now all of a sudden you want to start selling 50, 100, 200, $500,000 deals, and you're telling that person, okay, you've got to figure out a way to get and reach these top level executives that have access to $150,000 a year or $150,000 a quarter in budget. You've got to figure out how to sell to those people. You've got to be in front of them in a room. You got to go fly there, right? You have to go to conferences. You have to do presentations at these conferences. You have to be the market expert. So just because somebody's been successful at this level definitely does not mean they'll be successful at the higher level. So what I would recommend is, if you're in a situation where the product is changing and you're starting to move up market, then once you've got this process nailed down for your lower level price tier, fill out your team, SDR, AE, customer success for that product line. And then you, the CEO, move up and you do the selling first to figure out what needs to go on there. And you can hire an enterprise sales veteran, somebody that's been in the industry for a while. You just want to be really, really careful about who you hire and making sure that you're hiring somebody just because they've sold at Salesforce or just because they've sold at Oracle or IBM doesn't mean they're going to be able to sell your product. You need to be really clear about what part of the sales process were they responsible for. Because I've been at big organizations, a company called CoreLogic, where they're like for enterprise sales to big financial companies like Wells Fargo, there's like 6 people involved with the sale. Like we had an account, we had the account executive, we had an account manager, we had an implementation specialist, a subject matter expert. The sales managers got involved pretty frequently. And then they would bring in experts, people from our advisory group, which is where I sat, who we would come in and help map out solutions. So even though the AE got the credit, good job, you closed a $6,000 deal with Wells Fargo. Dude, there's like 6 people that are all helping out. Not to mention the marketing team was spending like literally $1 million at a conference, not just because of the booth, but because of events that we were running, dinners they were hosting, hotels. We'd have like 100 people fly in for the big industry conference, like all the travel, like literally spending hundreds of thousands, close to $1 million at these conferences, right? So it's like, yeah, AE gets the credit. Good job, man. Good job, Eric. You closed the sale. You got the $6 million account. But it turns out Eric had like the help from 20 people. So if you bring in that person in to work at a startup where you need them to build this process for you at the enterprise level, that person can really struggle or might expect you to like, oh, I thought, the marketing team was going to feed me leads. Like, no, dude, we're still trying to figure out how to sell. So that's where you need to take ownership, do it yourself first, map it out, and then figure out the team to build around you. So, all right, peeps. Well, look, I think that's a good place to give it a stop. Let me take a picture of this. We'll figure out if there's a way to get you these whiteboards if we need. If not, we'll send out the recording as well. Let me just grab, I'm just gonna post this. I'll just repost it that, good, Eric, I'm glad that you agree. If you guys want some help implementing, best thing to do is to book in a scale session with us. And ahead of that scale session, once you book it in, we'll send you like a short type form, ask you to fill in a couple of questions just to make sure we're really clear about what you need and if we can help you. And that way, if for whatever reason we don't feel like we can help you with where you are and what you need, then we can point you in the right direction. But if we can, then we can take advantage of that scale session and help you build out a plan. And for a lot of people, they have that session with us and like, wow, this plan's really good. Really appreciate this. How can you help? And we can talk through our coaching program and whether or not we think you're a good fit for it or not. But other folks, they just want the plan and they want to do it on their own. Either way, it's fine. We're happy to invest that time. We want to help. Our mission at our company is to help 100 startups over the next 10 years get to $10 million in annual recurring revenue. Because when we do that, if you do the math on that, 100 startups over $10 million in ARR, that's $1 billion impact that we want to make, not just in the startup industry, but we want to impact companies all over the world to help them reach their mission and vision of their companies. And so this is one of the ways that we contribute to doing that. So really glad you could spend some time with us today. Love the questions. You can see, love doing this stuff. Happy to help. And I think we'll call it a day. All right, guys. Thanks so much for joining. We'll talk to you later.